Yes, everybody. Welcome back to Threadman Chazza. I hope you're all well. We're back today with another video. I haven't done one of these videos for a little while, but I thought I would have a go at one of these videos today. We're going to analyse the Manchester United penalty win over Brighton from yesterday's game. As always, please do subscribe if you're new. Please do smash a like if you enjoyed. Get your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you thought of the game, guys, how you thought it went. And yeah, let's get into it. So basically what we're going to do in this video is we're going to go through some still images and talk through exactly how Manchester United coped out of possession against Brighton. Okay, so we're not going to cover the in possession side. As I always like to do with these videos, I like to focus on one particular element of our game, whether it be attacking set pieces, defending set pieces, attacking transitions, defending transitions, in possession, out of possession, generally sort of what I want to focus on, what's most suitable from a particular game. And today it's the out of possession stuff. So Manchester United in this game set up mostly in a 4-1-4 shape. So a 4-1-4-1 shape out of possession. Okay, so we had our back four. We knew obviously we didn't have our sort of best back four available, but with what we had available, we obviously had Dalot, Shaw, Lindelof, and Wan-Bissaka. We obviously had Casemiro just in front. We had then another four of Rashford, Eriksen, Bruno, and Anthony, with Martial at number 9. Okay, so that was our shape, and we could see this shape quite frequently throughout the match. So you see here, after 2 minutes 46 seconds, you'll see there we've got the sort of line of 4, and we'll talk about why that's the case in a moment. And then again, you see here, after 17 minutes, another clip, you'll see Casemiro is just behind the 4. So he's just behind the 4. I think that's Danny Welbeck with him over there. And you've obviously got Martial as the sole striker, and you've got the 4 behind. So you've got this sort of 4-1-4 shape, 4-1-4-1 shape, but you've also got Luke Shaw being quite aggressive, pushing out at times. Okay, so why exactly did Manchester United opt for this shape? Well, Brighton, as we talked about in the tactical analysis, sort of tactical preview before this game, we talked about Brighton building up in a 4-2-4 shape. So we talked about them building up with a 4 at the back, and then you've got the 2 pivot players, McAllister and Caicedo. Sometimes it's Gross and Caicedo, but they've got 2 players in that pivot, and then they often have a 4 in front. So they have their 2 wide players and their striker and their attacking midfield player, or their second striker, then in front. And what we tend to see during build-up is this sort of 4-2-4 shape, and it's very, very difficult for an opponent to try and put a stop to this shape, because they have excellent players sort of in terms of their comfort in possession, their security on the ball, their press resistance, which means sort of how can they deal when how can they deal with situations under pressure? Can they get out of tough situations when they're being pressed? And Brighton have 2 brilliant ball-playing centre-backs in Dunk and Webster. They're 2 full-backs. In this game, they used Estupinian and Gross, but if it's Estupinian and Veltman, they're 2 brilliant fullbacks, and obviously their midfield players are really, really good in tight situations. So Manchester United set up with this sort of shape, with Bruno and Eriksen tight on Caicedo and McAllister, and then with Rashford and Anthony either side on sort of Brighton's fullbacks, with Martial sort of occupying the ball-sided centre-back. So whichever centre-back has the ball, Martial tended to press. So you'll see in this example, Martial's going towards Dunk, and Martial's sort of curving his run a little bit so that Webster can't receive possession. So that's what Martial did quite well in this game. So that was Manchester United's objective, the flat 4 across midfield, to try and deal with this sort of the 4 players that Brighton often have in that line during their build-up, because we know we've seen teams this season and in the last few years, we've seen teams that like to play a positional style of football. We've seen Pep Guardiola, Mikel Arteta. They often don't use a back 4 in build-up. They often use, it's the fancy word for it, is sort of an asymmetrical back 3, which basically means you're using back 3. You've either got one of the fullbacks pushing in and what the opposite fullback bombing on, or you've got 2 centre-backs and a midfield player dropping in, but you basically form a back 3 in build-up. So we don't often see as much with teams that want to dominate games now, a sort of a back 4 during build-up. So it's a very, very interesting concept, and this is why Manchester United set up in this way to try and counteract that. So what I want to talk about, I want to look at this little image here, because I want to talk about hybrid pressing, and we've talked about this before. So Hybrid pressing is basically when, in Manchester United's case, it's basically Antony and Rashford have two jobs. When the opposition is building up, they have two pressing jobs, the centre-back and the full-back. Okay, so Rashford has to make sure he is wary of the left centre-back, the right centre-back and the right back, and Antony has to be wary of the left centre-back and the left back. Okay, so hybrid pressing, you try and get the most of a man marking system and a sort of a zonal marking system put together. So this is why it's called a hybrid. Okay, that the actual term doesn't matter too much. The actual meaning behind it is that Antony and Rashford are not man marking. They're trying to deal with that sort of space in between the centre back and the full back. So they've got that sort of a job. So what I want to talk about is if Marcus Rashford and Antony get their angles wrong, they're not aware, then they're not positioned in the right place. You can see here that the opposition's fullbacks can become free. Okay, we've seen Manchester United's fullbacks not pushing up this season, so there's a big debate on why Manchester United don't do this. Why do Manchester United not push their fullbacks higher up the pitch? If Rashford and Antony are marking the centre-backs, why don't we just push Dalot and Wan-Bissaka? Dalot up to number 4 to mark the opposition's number 4, and Wan-Bissaka to mark the opposition's number 3. Why don't we just do that? Why don't we do that? Well, the reason we might not do that is because we don't maybe trust our centre-backs in the channels, right? So if Dalot pushes on to the opposition's right back and Aaron Wan-Bissaka pushes on to the opposition's left back, that obviously might leave Lindelof and Shaw having to deal with the two strikers and the opposition wide players. So they're going to have to come out maybe into the channels and defend. And maybe Ten Hag doesn't fancy that our centre backs are sort of comfortable in those sort of transitional moments in the channels. And maybe also he doesn't trust that David De Gea will come off his line and sweeps. Yeah, so maybe that's the reason why. But basically, hybrid pressing, Antony and Rashford have to be wary of both centre back and full back especially when the ball is on the opposite side. So obviously, if the ball goes out to number 5, Martial will go and press the number 5 and Rashford can go to the number 4. But then Antony's got the task then. If the ball switches over, what's Antony's positioning like? So it's very, very important for the wingers to have good discipline, and their movement and their curving of their runs need to be good. So if they do press the centre-back, can they curve their run in a way that it stops the passing lane out to the full-back? Okay, so that's what we're talking about. So you'll see here, this is put into practice. Okay, so you'll see Martial, you can see by his movement, is on the way to press dunk. So the centre back is going, the centre back dunk is about to receive the ball, and Martial is going out there. Okay, United are in good positions. We see again, Eriksen is on Caicedo, a common theme throughout the game. You'll see Rashford is in quite a good position. You've got Webster, and out of your picture, Pascal Gross is towards the sort of right-hand side of the picture. So towards the right-hand side of the picture, towards the bottom of the picture is Pascal Gross, although you can't see him at the moment. So Rashford's in a good position, because if that ball does try to go out to Webster, Rashford can press. And if that ball does go out to Pascal Gross, he's in a decent position to go and close him down. So we're in good positions. Antony on the right is also stopping that passing lane out to Estupiñán on the left back. So we're all in good positions. Okay, so that's on 12 minutes, 43 seconds. 4 seconds later, this happens. So you'll see here, we're in trouble here. We're in trouble now, because what's happened? Well, actually, what's happened is the ball's gone back to Sanchez. Martial's pressing Sanchez, and Rashford has engaged onto Webster. But this has left Pascal Gross in loads and loads of space. So this was a common theme throughout the first half. You probably noticed it. You probably remember now. Oh, yeah. I do remember seeing Pascal Gross in so much space. I wonder why that was. Well, this is a common theme for Manchester United this season. This is one of our weaknesses when we do press. The way we use this system, and the fact that we don't push our fullbacks on, the way that we use this system, as well as using man marking in midfield quite often, the problem is that because we've got man marking in midfield, those midfield players cannot leave their markers. So Eriksen can't leave Caicedo to drop into that space and close down Gross. Our fullbacks don't push on, so that pass out to the fullback is always on. And if you've got good goalkeepers, we've seen Alisson exploit it this season, particularly in that Liverpool game. He exploited it a lot, Alisson, in that game for Liverpool. But Robert Sanchez is also decent with his feet. He's not incredible with his feet, but he's decent with his feet. So he can find those passes out to Gross, and they did it a lot. So that's one example there. Here we go again. So we're in the 14th minute and the 51st second. You'll see, you can probably see just at the bottom of the picture, you can probably see a head, and that head is Pascal Gross. So you'll see again there, Rashford, you can see the way he's moving towards Webster. Yeah, so if that ball does go to Webster, so number 4, so the right-sided centre-back, you can see Rashford's moving towards Webster. So obviously that can then leave this situation. So this is 3 seconds later. So you can see how it's quite interesting. I hope you guys are sort of finding this interesting. But I think it's interesting using these images, even more interesting than videos, because you can compare 2 still images and you can see within 3 or 4 seconds of a football match how pressing or a lack of pressing or not pressing in the right way or a weakness of a pressing system, what sort of problems that can cause for a team. Because within 3 or 4 seconds, in 2 examples I've shown now, in the first 15 minutes of a game, Brighton are finding easy passes. Maybe it's not an easy pass, but for a Brighton player that's good on the ball, it's a simple pass for them, perhaps. An easy pass out to the fullback, okay? So this is where Gross ends up. So this is sort of 7 seconds after Gross receives possession. So you can see we're not just allowing Brighton to receive the ball, sort of their fullback to receive the ball, deeper in the sort of in their own defensive third. You know, we're not just saying, oh, it's not going to cause us any problems because they're receiving it in deep areas. We're actually allowing this fullback to drive through the pitch. And now Dallow's in a 2v1 situation. Okay. Eriksen as well. We know he's got a man marking job on Caicedo, but we know Eriksen is not the most mobile. So even if Eriksen does get back and he does sort of get back here into sort of a decent position, we know he's not the most mobile than maybe sort of a Fred or a McTominay is in that situation. They'll be able to get back and at least be combative against Gross. You know, Caicedo isn't even in the picture here. So, you know, even if that was McTominay or Fred, you'd probably expect them to put a bit more of a physical edge in there on Gross, or at least occupy a position inside so Dallow can sort of move out to Solly March. But this was a constant issue sort of in the first 15 minutes. Okay, so what do I want to show here? Let me remember. Okay, again, another example here after 16 minutes, 41 seconds. You'll see again, Rashford goes over to Webster. Look at the space Gross is in. Eriksen not tight enough to Caicedo. You'll see there the ball goes into Caicedo and eventually, look, it goes over to Gross. Okay, so again, Manchester United in the first 15, 16 minutes of the game, we struggled with that sort of area of the pitch on our left-hand side. Rashford, not good enough. Eriksen, not good enough. Not mobile enough. Not working hard enough, and not curving pressing runs well enough. They were our problems, really. Let's compare that with Anthony. Okay, so Martial again has gone over to the ball side, and now Anthony is on this side. So Anthony, as we talked about before, the hybrid pressing role, Anthony has got to watch the left centre-back and the left-back. You can see here he's in a decent position. Estupinian is out of the picture. Anthony's in a decent position. So what actually happens here, the ball goes out to Estupinian. Okay, so the ball goes out to Estupinian. So you'll see I've highlighted there Anthony's sort of what he's looking at. So you can see there, Anthony's looking back. So Anthony's in a decent position. The ball is in the air from Dunk, but Anthony's actually looking and he knows that pass because Anthony has been really, really good at this season. His positioning's been good, but you will get that pass will go out at times to the fullback. Even if you're a fantastic presser and a clever presser like Anthony is, that pass will go out when you're playing good opponents that have got good technical players. You can't stop that pass going out. It's going to happen. It's going to happen, but you've got to try and limit it happening. And if it does happen, you want this. So Anthony gets back, forces Estupinian back, and Brighton play backwards, and United, stop any problems happening there. But if Anthony didn't do that, Manchester United are in trouble. Okay, so I'm just comparing 2 different sort of situations there between Anthony and Rashford. So Rashford in this game, I don't know whether he was carrying an injury, but Rashford in this game, as he was as well away at Newcastle, I don't think Ten Hag will be happy with Rashford in this game in terms of his pressing. Whether he was injured, I'm not sure. So I'm not just hating on Rashford for this. I'm just saying this could have caused us a bigger problem. But I think eventually we defended well. I think Luke Shaw and Lindelof, we did well generally in the box to stop any of this sort of causing us any real issues in terms of goal scoring opportunities. I think Brighton had an XG of 1.2 and their average this season is about 1.8. So we did limit them to fewer chances than they usually have, or fewer quality of chances than they usually have in 90 minutes. But this just shows you the example of how switched on you need to be in this current system that we're playing out of possession. Our wingers need to be extremely well switched on out of possession. And that includes not just work rate. A lot of people just focus on work rate, but it's also your positioning, how you curve your pressing runs to stop a pass going out to a fullback. Anthony Martial doesn't sprint as much as we'd like him to, maybe, but Anthony Martial is a clever presser. Eric Ten Hag called him an intelligent presser. He said in the game against Man City at home when we won 2-1, Martial said that Eric Ten Hag, said that Martial did really, really well with his pressing. So I think it goes under the radar a bit at times when you are pressing. It's not even sometimes about pressing. I know that sounds crazy, but it's actually about where you're standing on the pitch. And that can be as important as your work rate. Anthony has both. His positioning is really good. I need to look into it more, but I imagine that Eric Ten Hag had probably used some of these principles before at Ajax. So I think that's maybe why Anthony's a bit more used to it, but I need to look into that more. That's maybe why Anthony is a bit more comfortable with this sort of a role. But yes, Anthony was really, really good at this. I also want to focus on sort of the role of Shaw and Lindelof. So Shaw and Lindelof did really, really well in this game. They were really, really aggressive. And basically, when Brighton have this 4-2-4 in build-up, they often like to drop one or both of their strikers when they set up in the 4-2-4. So they like to drop one of those strikers or one of those attacking midfield players. They like to drop one of them at least, into a much deeper zone to try and create some sort of superiority in midfield, okay, to try and drag defenders out, which leaves space, obviously, in behind for other players. So Welbeck, we know Danny Welbeck's movement is really, really good. We noticed that at home to Brighton when we lost the first game of the season, right? Danny Welbeck's movement's really, really good. He comes into nice pockets of space. He's got decent hold-up plays. He's a decent passer. He links the play nicely. He's not a prolific striker, but maybe similar to Martial in terms of, sort of his movement, sort of off the ball, coming towards the ball, coming to feet and linking play. So we did that quite a lot. But what we did really, really well, because we know with this man marking in midfield, it can, with the hybrid pressing as well, we can get caught out in situations if players are not fully on it. It's quite man orientated, our system. I know it's called hybrid pressing, but the way we play under Ten Hag, the way we play for a lot of our season, is very, very much based on players winning individual duels. And what Ten Hag did in this game, he was really, really brave. And whenever Welbeck went into this sort of area, I'm sure this was not just a Luke Shaw decision in the game. I think Ten Hag said to Shaw, every time Welbeck goes in there, close him down as much as you can and be aggressive. And Shaw did that really, really well. Luke Shaw, I think he won 3 out of 4 of his ground duels. He made several tackles and interceptions as well during the game. Lindelof won over half of his ground duels as well. So both players were really aggressive, and we stopped Brighton causing us too many problems from this build-up. Pep Guardiola did say Brighton are the best team in the world at building up from the back, but I think Eric Ten Hag, despite there still being 1 or 2 issues in this system, I think Eriksen's mobility when we are using man marking in midfield can be a slight problem. I think Casemiro's not been as good recently since his suspensions, but hopefully he can get back to what he was doing before. I still think his awareness of situations is very, very good, but he wasn't quite at it yesterday. I think he improved in the second half, mind you. But I think Eriksen's lack of mobility, I think Casemiro being slightly off it in recent games. I think Rashford not understanding that hybrid pressing role fully, sort of perfectly well. And I think the injuries, I think those things did hamper us in this game. But I think Eric Ten Hag deserves big, big credit because he's received a lot of criticism, and, he's rightly so. He's received criticism for, some things he's done in terms of subs and setups. I can totally accept that. But Eric Ten Hag is still impacting Manchester United in a net positive way. He's still making more good tactical tweaks and setting his team up sort of better than he is not setting up his team well. Okay, so I think people need to give him credit for this game. We limited Brighton to Although they played through us a few times, when they did get to our final third, we defended resolutely. David De Gea made a couple of good saves when he needed to. So I think all of our players, Wan-Bissaka was brilliant up against Mitoma. I haven't even mentioned that because I wanted to focus more on our defending until it got to the final third. But just to mention it, our defending, sort of when it was in Brighton's final third, our defending around the box was brilliant. Brighton missed, I think Welbeck had a header and then Ciso had a chance, but they didn't have numerous big chances. And that was obviously represented in their expected goals, which was only 1.2. As I said, from the data that's available to me that I've looked at, their average is around 1.8 for the season. Okay, so we average Brighton only to 2/3 of their normal expected goals. 2/3 of their normal expected goals. Okay, so that is something to be impressed with against a good Brighton team, a very good team, without our two best central defenders that Ten Hag likes to use. With players only just coming back from injury and things like that. I think we should be immensely proud. I know we didn't win it in 90 minutes. We won it on penalties. It was a 50-50 until it, obviously, when you get to penalties, it's very much 50-50, very, very close to 50-50. But Erik Ten Hag deserves praise in the 120 minutes, how we handled the game, despite one or two issues. Well done, Ten Hag. Well done, Manchester United. We are in the FA Cup final. Let's take on Manchester City. Cheers, guys. Please do like the video. Please do subscribe if you're new. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. The written version of this is on Twitter if you want to have a read. I'll put that in the comments, in the description, sorry. Big up, everybody. See you next time.